Hey there. I will wait until I get the sign that we have a quorum before I get us going, okay? But hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Hi. All right, give me 1 second.
I see at least 13 members are here, Senator.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so I'm sure we'll continue to see folks arrive as we go, but I think we can get started. I think we have a pretty interesting, streamlined agenda tonight, so I'm eager to get into it. Welcome, everybody, to our first Reading Consortium for Educational Equity full body meeting of 2021. I know it doesn't feel like our first meeting because we have so many and everyone's been working so hard, and I'm very appreciative of that. I'm going to let our team go ahead and do our roll call. And then I'll say a few more words before we get into our work group reports.
Okay, hello. So I'm just going to run through roll real quick. Aaron Bass.
Here.
Alfreda Butcher. No. Dan Shelton.
Present.
Danielle Woods. No. Okay. Darrell Green.
Here.
Right. Eugene Young. Okay. Henry Smith.
Here.
Okay. James DeSheen.
Here.
Thank you. Jeff Menzer.
Here.
Joe Jones.
Here.
Catherine Bradley. Link Holer. Ernesto Lopez.
Here.
Margie Lopez Waite.
Here.
Maria Matos.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Brzezicki. Representative Smith,
Present.
Representative Chakwocha,
Present.
Noel Picara, Ray Jones Avery, Stephanie Ingram,
Here.
thank you. Ted Blunt, Tika Hartsock,
Here.
thank you. Senator Lockman
Here.
and Matt Den.
Here.
Great. Thank you.
All right, great. And we'll just note any arrivals in the next 2 minutes. I wanted to make a point to welcome Senator Ernie Lopez. He joined us for our prior meeting, but this is, I believe, his first official meeting as our member representing the Minority Caucus in the Senate. So welcome, Senator Lopez. Glad to have you. And as I mentioned, we've been very busy. December was a big month where we committed to our interim recommendations. And ever since, we have been working on advancing those, and lots has been happening in terms of, for those of you who participated, we did have a press event discussing those with a broader audience. And we did have a number of folks who are here tonight and otherwise also speak positively about them in front of the Joint Finance Committee just yesterday. So thank you very much to those who have done that so far. And we will, of course, continue to be promoting that and look for any support both within and without the consortium. I think our next up on our agenda is the minutes from December. So you have received those in your email earlier this week. So if anyone needs a moment to look over them, I'm just going to look for a motion to approve them in a second.
I motion to approve them. This is Tika Hartsock.
Thanks, Tika.
Dan Shelton, second.
Thank you, Dan. All right, if you're in favor of that, maybe you can give me a thumbs up, do the Zoom way, the physical way. And if anyone has any opposition, speak nice and loud. All right. Does that follow protocols? Kelly, are we good? Okay. All right, seemed unanimous. And I see that we have Maria who's here. Thanks. Hi, Maria. All right, so we've got approved minutes from December, and I think that sets us up to move into our agenda. We are going to talk through all of the work groups. I think we'll have a particular emphasis around the conversation from funding and governance and the settlement work groups, but I'll get us started. I think just talk very, very quickly through with the first one. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. For our educator work group, although Representative Smith, I know you are here, you can feel free to chime in. We can go to the next slide, but essentially the educator work group is not currently meeting because they met the longest and got, completed their work and are essentially, just actively working right now to make sure that that initial set of recommendations becomes a reality. So we thank them for that. And Representative Smith, if you have anything you want to add to that, feel free.
Just going to say thanks for, I think JFC presentation went well. I thought the press conference went well, and I look forward to all the money they're going to give us.
Absolutely. And all the work that we're going to get done supporting our educators and growing new ones right here in Delaware. So it's been so far so good. Does anybody have any questions about the work of the educators? Yes, JFC was a marathon yesterday for sure. I think a good hour and a half of public comment, but outstanding public comment. So, when it's about education, it's fun. So, any other questions about what the educators are up to? Okay. All right, I think we can move on to social determinants. So I'm going to yield, I believe, yep, Jeff is here. don't know if Ray is here, but Jeff, do you want to walk us through your update for the social determinants work group?
Thanks, Senator Lockman. I'll try to be as brief as you just were, though. That was impressive with the educator work group. Yeah, the social determinants group had a meeting last week, and we're beginning a strategic advocacy campaign to get the interim recommendations funded to see them become a reality. That's it's a combination of leveraging the networks of those who are in the work group, as well as educating ourselves more deeply around the efforts of our subcommittees. I echo Representative Smith's comments about the press conference. That's really going to be a foundation of our messaging and our branding. That lays the groundwork nicely to kind of continue the conversation. We are going to be having our next meeting we have a planning meeting tomorrow. And we have encouraged our members of our work group to submit testimonial videos as you were soliciting during the press conference. So we really are just getting back in the swing of things, but it's now about seeing through to the end the recommendations that have been brought forward.
Excellent. And thank you to both of you for just sort of reiterating the press conference is a great foundation. It was. I have to give a ton of credit to my co-chair, Matt Den, for really engineering that in a lot of ways. And then, of course, just everyone who came and spoke, I think, in really moving ways to the importance of what we have chosen to focus on with these recommendations. So great job, everybody. But like you said, it's just the start, and we have a lot more of testifying to do to that end. So, okay. And, did we want to speak a little bit to the draft bill, Jeff?
Yes. I have Dawn Alexander with us here from one of our sub-work groups or smaller working groups. And I'm going to ask her if she would share the conversation around the draft bill for developmental screenings, which was one of our interim recommendations.
Excellent. Thank you. Dawn?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Mentor. So the bill would ensure that all children enrolled in a licensed childcare center who are ages birth through 5 would receive developmental screening or participate in developmental screening at least one time per year using the Department of Education's system that already exists. So there is an online system currently, and families are able to complete the screening using a computer, using a smartphone, using an iPad. It's a really easy way for families to access screening. And so the reason for it is when we look at recommendations from the US Department of Health and Human Services, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, Head Start, leaders in early childhood education recommend developmental screening based on the American Academy of Pediatrics Bright Futures schedule periodicity. So we know that children need to participate in developmental screening frequently, so we can ensure that children who may be eligible for early intervention services or special education services in preschool have access to those services as early in life as possible. There's decades of research showing that the earlier children receive these services for which they may be eligible, the greater the impact for the child, for the family, and for the system. So children who receive early intervention early in life are more likely to read successfully, less likely to need special education services, more likely to graduate from high school. This is a ton of research demonstrating the impact of early intervention. So we want to make sure that we provide families with that access. And the access currently exists through the Department of Education website.
Great. So and I took a look at the draft bill that was, I believe, distributed to everyone in our new newsletter, which is another big piece of news. Hope everyone got to see the new newsletter that our team did a beautiful job on. Just click that link and take a look at the draft. So it looks like it ties it to licensure, so to the licensing process.
Yes. And when we look at ECAP programming, which is the Department of Education has ECAP programming, which follows best practices and really ensures that programs are the highest quality, and developmental screening is one of those recommendations. So we know the impact of developmental screening. We know it's supported by Head Start, by school districts, by ECAP programming, by the Department of Education. We also provide access to developmental screening through our department, through DHSS. And we want to make sure that more children have that access, more children and families.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I know it's not filed yet, but definitely something for us to keep an eye on. I see Maria Matos, you have your hand raised, Maria?
Yeah, I see that the screening system will be administered by the parent or guardian. Did you give any thought to non-English speakers?
Yes, so the screening is available in multiple languages.
Uh-huh. Because our experience at the Early Development Center at the LACC has been that we have to walk the parents through that system. It's not something that the parents can easily pick up and do.
So there are different ways that we can provide that support. One is through 2-on-1 Help Me Grow. There's a system now within 2-on-1 Help Me Grow where families can call 2-on-1 and they can complete the screening on the telephone with the assistance of a 2-on-1 Help Me Grow specialist. So that's one opportunity. Another is having access through 2-on-1 where we're able to provide the screeners on paper, and then families are able to submit them that way. So they can be submitted to the school, they'll be submitted to the school district. So the lift will be on the local school district where the child care program is. And there'll be additional funding with the bill to support school district staff to complete the screeners. So let's say if there are paper screeners that need to be submitted versus having it done on a phone or through telephone, they can be printed out in the family's home language, and then they can be scored by the school district.
So this is just exclusively to be used by school districts?
No, this is through the child care centers, but the way the system is working right now is child care centers, wherever they're located. So the feeder pattern where the child care is, the screeners are scored by the school district that in which that child care sits.
Okay. I'll put my hand down. I got to think about that.
And that's the system that is in place now.
Yeah.
Oh, well then if it's the system that is in place now, we do it for the parents.
So
we being the staff.
Okay. So the system that is in place for licensed childcare programs through the Department of Education is that when the scoring is done and it's put into the online system, then the local school district completes the screening and does the scoring and contacts and works with the family. So I'm not sure. We could certainly talk more offline about why you're doing those at the LACC, but your local school district should be working with you to do them for you.
No, the local school system is working with us. We just have to fill the information for the parent.
Okay.
Definitely sounds like a good equity conversation to continue offline for sure, just to find out how do we streamline making sure that we are putting the tools effectively into the hands of parents, right? And not putting too much of a burden on the child care facilities to facilitate that. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for bringing that.
The goal is to reduce the burden on the child care program.
Okay, great.
Senator Lockman, and
yes, sir.
Before we proceed, because I also want to raise, again, when we talk about the geographic location of where the child care centers are located, right? And so disproportionately, we have a higher volume of RECLA, or a large percentage. So when we talk about equity and we talk about staffing in terms of the burden on the school district, we want to be mindful. I think as Maria is indicating, that this is a community-wide effort that needs to take place. And if that means we as the district support capacity building within the childcare centers to work collaboratively to ensure that we maximize those opportunities for parents and those in the community, relative caregivers, to participate in it. We just need to be mindful of that because, again, it is based on geographic location of where the childcare centers reside or are located, not necessarily that those children would actually end up coming to a red clay school, for example. So again, there's a lot of transient nature in terms of where the students may matriculate, but because of where the geographic location is. So I'm just flagging that because when we talk about the burden on the school district.
And there's funding with the bill. There absolutely had to be funding with the bill because we know that this is increased work by the school district to score all of the developmental screeners. So there's additional funding to ensure that school districts are supported for that. And then also, I'm glad, Superintendent Green, that you talked about the family may not live in the district, but they're attending a childcare in the district. And there is an MOU between and among the school districts in Newcastle County for early learning for birth to 5. So a child may live, let's say, in Christina, but if their childcare is in Colonial, then Colonial would score the screener. And if the child would need special education services for preschool, then Colonial would provide those services.
It's really helpful. It is a complex process, and I look forward to hearing how the conversation continues in social determinants to make sure that we're making it less burdensome for all involved, but more effective for the kids. So great. All right. Anything else? Any questions for social determinants? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Jeff and Dawn. I think we are going to move on to the funding and governance work group. Representative Chipocha, I'm going to hand it off to you. I think, and if Eugene Young is here, to the two of you. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So our funding and governance group, just our path forward, as many of you know, we worked, once we hit COVID, we really shifted a lot of our focus toward a funding issue. And one of the things we picked up was the referendum reform. So House Bill 129 is currently being updated with a lot of the amendment and recommended changes that came from this body, and also working with the CFOs and the superintendents of our districts. We really are trying to create a very strong bill and have that presented this session. With that bill, once it's filed and completed, we've started working with the Network Delaware on issues campaign so that we can really get into the hearts of our communities, work with our district partners, as well as our representatives from various districts to have listening sessions and to give individuals an understanding of why referendum reform is necessary and how we view it as an equity issue. Our funding and governance group is shifting our gears back to where we were pre-COVID, is really looking at some of our redistricting and governance work. So our goal is to look at our membership of our subcommittee, as well as begin to move forward and adopt new members, bring new members on where we see fit, and then to begin meeting in March, where we're scheduling our work group meetings to begin for that governance work. And in preparation with that, we have a few meetings scheduled, one with our superintendents, as well as some with some representatives as well.
We're in the process of putting together our overall governance draft work plan. We should have that within the next couple weeks or so, sooner than later, rather. One of the things that we're really focusing on is being able to review the viable governance options shifts within Wilmington and Newcastle County. As we originally were having conversations about almost around this time last year, we'll say March and April of last year. Also, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we're ensuring that there's a great deal of community engagement and student well-being as driving forces in the process. And that comes through deeper engagement within our communities, going back to a little bit what Representative Chipocha said, the idea of connecting with people, make sure it's student and family led. And then just the overall commitment of just doing this work even more boldly, and making this, making sure this process is something that we're working with all stakeholders and pushing ourselves to do what is best at all periods of time for the children and the families that we're serving. So that's pretty much what we have as of right now. We'll be having updates, as Representative Corte said. We'll be starting our meetings in March, and we'll also have our plan for that as well. Any questions?
If I don't see any hands yet, let's see. Oh, Maria, go ahead.
So can you put back can you go back one slide? What does viable governance shift mean?
But it's the same. It goes back to some of the initial conversations that we're having in, what was that? Geez, time flies. March and February, March. Or
You
between,
want me to remember?
I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to get a timeline in my head. Just remember when we were talking about the different options that move forward, whether it were the different districts, the river option, the city option, all the options that were at the table. Okay, come on, son. All the options that were at the table at that time, but just bringing this back up to have discussions about this and also in moving forward.
Yeah, essentially it's where we left off when the pandemic hit. We were about to
yeah, I remember now.
Conversations, right? Yeah. So
picking up we're just picking up right in that area, and just bringing those conversations back up, because we also wanted to be mindful of the superintendents, the CFOs, all that were involved as soon as this pandemic hit, and they had a great deal of work on their plate, still do, but just trying to just be mindful of that. And at that moment of time last year, we didn't want to overburden these conversations.
Got it. I remember. It all came rolling back.
Hopefully in a good way. Any other questions for funding and governance and kind of where things stand as they too get their engines revving to move forward? Okay. All right, good. Well, I know there's a lot more to come from funding and governance. There are two very heavy lifts that this particular work group is working with, and we're having, I think a lot of conversations about how best to navigate that going into the next, year, next 2 years, to make sure that before too long we have, got some solid proposals on both fronts. And I'm looking forward to hearing how we're going to progress in our next meeting. There aren't any other questions for the funding and governance work group. I think we can, I feel like I should do a drum roll or something. Our settlement work group, our newest work group, has been working very, very diligently to become our brain on the settlement and help us make sure, I'm not trying to steal your thunder, Chuck and Aaron, but make sure that we are doing what we said we would do, which is ensure that the terms of the settlement are not only met, but exceeded in the service of equity. So I'm very happily going to hand it over to Aaron Bass and Chuck Longfellow to hear more about what they've been doing and some things that they would like us to consider this meeting.
Thank you for having us. And I also want to say thank you to our team, so those on the committee. The work group membership is right there, and to Haley and to Kelly, who've been providing great support throughout the way. So we definitely appreciate everybody, as well as to Matt and to Senator Lockman. We appreciate you for your leadership. So with that, that's our group of people who have been meeting. With the next slide. And we want to talk to you about our group scope. So with that, I'll pass it off to Chuck.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Here is the scope that we came up with for our work group. One of the things we want to be is a watchdog for how the settlement actions are implemented. I say a watchdog because we know we're part of a watch pack. A lot of people have eyes on the settlement. So we are one of the watchdogs on that. And we're happy to have that role. We want to ensure that the consortium is responding appropriately to implementation. We want to be the consortium subject matter on the settlement, subject matter expert on the settlement, and to make recommendations for the General Assembly to implement and proceed on the actions. Next. Next, we have our goals. We want to offer guidance and influence on how the General Assembly makes decisions related to the settlement. And we'll do that upward through the main consortium group. You'll see later on, we are suggesting some motions that the group takes and some recommendations on this and some legislation that is related to the settlement. We want to challenge the state and General Assembly to do more. We want it to move faster. We want it to be, we want more resources. So we want them to use this as a floor, as a baseline. And we want to connect the settlement to real change. Next. Here's a chart. These next two slides are a chart that was put together by UD's Institute for Public Administration staff. I know Aaron and I really like this chart because it's just a simple, easy view on what the settlement calls for, the minimum actions needed for compliance. We have opportunity funding with the different amounts. We have K-3 basic special education here. Next, please. Early education. And so, I mean, this is, you see the top line, ECAP is supposed to double to 12.2 million by 2024. We see some blank space in between now and then. So, you know, anywhere we can, if we can get that number to move up sooner, that's what we want to do. Teacher recruitment and retention. You see, again, there's some blank space between now and 2023. You know, something we would like to see is some of that to come to fruition more quickly if the money's there. Ombudsperson, and we have discussion around this. We call it, it's an ombudsperson, but it's more of a team, I think, because you know, there's discussion around whether this is a person per county, and we don't believe it is. We believe the intent here is to have a team per county. So that's why we say create and fund one group at each county. And every time we have these presentations, we say, if somebody sees it differently, let us know. And so far, nobody's seen it differently. So that's a good thing. And then the equity statements and the independent funding assessment. So this is a nice chart that I think we can use for reference as we go along. Next. So the governor's recommended budget did come out a few weeks back, and we analyzed it as a committee. We took a look, what are the minimum expectations from the settlement for this fiscal year, for this year's budget? What do we expect to see in the governor's recommended? And so we expected to see in the Opportunity Fund the increase to 35 million. Also legislation to make it permanent and to require a report. We also expected to see ombudsperson's program. And as we say, we keep saying we want it accelerated and we want it increased wherever we can see that. Next slide, please. So what did make it into the governor's recommended budget? Several things. And I'm happy to say that the governor's recommended budget exceeded the minimum requirements of the settlement. Section 305A7, there's an intent statement regarding meeting the timeline for the recruitment and retention of educators. So you'll see, if you read the governor's recommended budget epilogue, you'll see a lot of what I call intent statements that shows that, you know, once this gets into, once this gets through the Joint Finance Committee, the General Assembly, and the governor signs it, then that intent becomes part of the law. And that, I think that's a really strong statement that, you know, they intend to meet the requirements of the settlement. Section 344 increases opportunity funds by 13 million, plus, let me see where I am. Yep, it increases it to 38 million, which exceeds the 35 million minimum for fiscal year 22. Of that, 30 million is for the opportunity fund per pupil funding. 8 million is for the mental health and reading part. So we expected to see 35 million with 5 million of that mental health and reading. We see 38 with 8 for mental health and reading. And the allocation requirements and annual reports are in the recommended budget. We also see an intent statement regarding meeting the K-3 basic timeline. And when Aaron gives some reports on some legislation that's out there. You'll see that there's another line of effort on this as well, going through legislation. Next. Also, the epilogue of the governor's recommended budget establishes and provides $1 million. Well, establishes the ombudsperson program, and the budget itself provides $1 million for this program. We see an intent statement around ECAP and another intent statement about the funding system study. One thing that our committee is talking about with the study is we definitely need to see some action on that ahead of time, because there's going to be a lead time for that. It's got to be probably something that's bid out and the specs created, and there's got to be research and all that. So, we should probably see something regarding this in the, maybe not this year's budget, but next year's budget. So we'll be looking for it. So overall, they exceed the minimum expected action per the settlement. Next slide, please. So now we're going to see if there's any questions or comments. And before we do that, let's advance one slide quickly, so I give you a preview of what we're asking for next. Our committee recommends that the consortium moves to endorse the settlement as a baseline, as a minimum. And so that's really what we're recommending upward to the full body consortium. So let's go back a slide, back to questions, and see if we have any questions or comments before we move on to Aaron's next section.
Thank you, Chuck and Aaron. That breakdown is incredibly helpful, and look forward to having that on the website as well, especially the grid. I don't see any hands yet, but if anyone wants to raise their hand, I will call on you. And
then Senator, if we don't have any, then we're just asking that the consortium consider a motion for to endorse this.
Okay. All right. So did you as chairs wish to make that motion in second, and then we can see if there's any discussion? Or
well, I'm not a member of the full body consortium, but I know that.
Oh, that's right.
But
Aaron?
I wish to make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Sorry. Great. Thank you.
Good one.
Keeping me on my toes. All right. Do we have any discussion about the motion to endorse the settlement as a baseline? Representative Chakotcha.
It wasn't on the motion, definitely in support of. I was trying to raise it before. And
okay.
A question. I know yesterday in JFC, Chuck, a question for you came up regarding having a CFO be a part of the independent, or work along with the independent group that's going to evaluate our funding system. And I don't know if we can put that in our recommendations, or maybe that's something we can further discuss.
I think we can further discuss it, and yeah, we could put whatever we want in the recommendations. I know that when Aaron goes through some of the legislation, we do have some things that came up in conversation that we want to endorse. The committee wants to endorse the bills that are out there, but at the same time, we do have some recommendations to enhance it. So yeah,
Okay.
Whatever process the consortium wants to use to do that would be great.
All right, excellent. All right, let's put a pin in that for a second. We have a motion on the table. It doesn't look like there's any discussion on it. If not, I think maybe Jason, we need to do a roll call.
Hey, Tizzy, real quick, before we move forward, I got just a private message that they're not sure that the chairs are allowed to make a motion.
Oh,
I'm not sure, but I don't know if we wanted to just make sure that if we wanted to redo it so Aaron wasn't the person, but I'm not 100% sure. I just wanted to let you know.
Well, I guess it would be better to play it safe. Thank you for raising that. Maria, would you like to make a motion perhaps? And then we'll see if we have a second from amongst the non.
Absolutely. I make the motion that we move.
This is Tika Hartsock. I second.
Thank you. Nice save. Thank you, Haley, for keeping us on top of that. All right. So we, again, have a motion on the table. Definitely properly, we hope. And if there aren't any questions or discussion, I think we can move to a roll call on that motion.
Okay. So I'm just going to run through Aaron Bass.
Yes.
Okay. Alfreda Butcher. Okay. Dan Shelton.
Yes.
Okay. Dania, have you joined us yet? Dania Woods? No. Okay. Darrell Green.
Yes.
Eugene Young,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Henry Smith,
Yes.
James DeSheen,
Yes.
Jeff Menzer,
Yes.
Joe Jones.
Yes.
Has Catherine Bradley joined us? No. Okay, Link Kohler,
Yes.
Senator Lopez,
Yes.
thank you. Margie Lopez Waite,
Yes.
thank you. Maria Matos,
Yes.
has Mayor Brzezicki joined us? No, okay. Representative Smith,
Yes.
okay. Representative Chakwocha,
Yes.
Noel Picara,
Yes.
Ray Jones Avery,
Yes.
Stephanie Ingram,
Yes.
thank you. Has Ted Blunt joined us? No, okay. Tika Hartsock,
Yes.
Senator Lockman,
Yes.
and Matt Den.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's 20 in favor of 20 attended.
Great. Awesome. All right, settlement work group, carry on.
We have a little bit more to go. So, yep. So legislation review, one thing for the settlement, we thought that this was really appropriate, excuse me, for the Rating Commission, because everything in the settlement impacts the children of Wilmington, Newcastle, and our charge, but also across the entire state. So we wanted to hit those. Legislation we're going to discuss today also impacts parts of the settlement. So we're going to walk you through some of that. And this is as of the February 8th meeting. So with the next slide. The first one is House Bill 86. This is for K-3 basic special education. I'll let you read it, but one thing I want to note is that for the settlement requirements, we wanted to see that there was special education for K-3, and that this also be a part of the legislation taking place this year. This is also part of the settlement. By the school year 23-24, fiscal year 24, the funding dedicated to basic special education students in kindergarten through third grade to equal funding currently in place for basic spec ed students in grades 4 through 12. So this is proposed legislation meets the baseline of the settlement requirements. And we did have a few suggestions around this. Just one, that the ombudsman, who, while everyone in the committee, agreed with this and supported this bill, one suggestion we had was that the ombudsman should have knowledge of special education in the settlement. So this is, while we approved all of these bills we're going to talk about today, the recommendations are just that. So they are not contingent upon these recommendations being passed, but we did have discussion around some places we think that these could be bolstered or some places to check, just like Representative Chakwocha said earlier. So we are in favor of House Bill 86 for K-3 basic special education. And we'll move to the next one. So any conversation about House Bill 86? Or questions?
Representative Chakwocha, I see your hand, but I think maybe it's still up from before.
Perfect. And I'm going to go through 3 of them too. So
okay.
We can move to the next one because they might blend together.
All right. If you have a specific House Bill 86 question, speak now, or you'll have to speak to them all together. All right. No hands. Go ahead.
Perfect. Senate Bill 56. So this is for opportunity funding. Just like HB 86, Senate Bill 56 is also sponsored by a few members on our Rating Commission. So for this one, it's about opportunity funding. It permanently establishes the opportunity funding. And as you know, in the past, this has been year to year. And so with the settlement agreement, this actually does focus on low income and ELL or English language learner students. Districts and charters must apply, and the funding has gone up. There's also a portion of this funding that goes towards mental health, as long as the school has 60% low income or 20% ELL. There is mental health or reading supports in place for them as well. It's awarded to the districts and controlled by DOE. This does meet the settlement requirements. And so as we looked again, just like we did for HB 86, Senate Bill 56 also meets the standard for the settlement. One suggestion we had, so while we did all agree to have the Reading Commission endorse this, one part of Senate Bill 56 was that there should be more school level support. And so on the ground, parents, students, community, and teachers also be a part of it. So that was part of the conversation. And there was conversation we had about supplanting and should that be reconsidered, considering how certain budgets are done at the charter and district level. So again, these are questions. These were not in lieu of anything or to change it, but we'd love to have conversation at the legislation about those different pieces. So that's for Senate Bill 56. Just like before, any questions or conversation about it? Yes.
When you say have on the local level community be a part of it, you mean in terms of making decisions about the spend?
Yes, making decisions about the spend as well as oversight of how the money is being used. And so this is a great way while the money is being spent, and it is to support the students of that school, having groups that are involved of community members, parents, teachers, etc. would be great, even the students, so that they can really be involved in the process of, is this really working for me?
Okay.
This is Ray Jones Avery. Let me turn my little camera on.
Hello there.
Hello. I don't have a question, but I have a kind of a question and then a comment. So has the Reading Consortium taken a position on a direction for the funding system itself for public education, or is there work to be done under the funding and governance work group?
It's currently on the work plan and still being worked out. Where does that fall? So we have not, as a consortium, taken a vote on a proposal, as we do not have a specific proposal that's been brought before us yet.
Okay, thank you. So the concern that I have is for it's dependent upon the direction of this consortium. The concern that I have is not based on the merit, and I'm not going to question the dollars at this point, but adding additional resources to a unit count system can unintentionally continue to perpetuate a system that is not driven by student needs, is driven by personnel. And so I think that we may be getting on a slippery slope here, and this may get misinterpreted as endorsing the perpetuation of a unit count system. So I just want to go on record with that concern.
Yep. That's also a great concern, and it's also part of the settlement as well. Mm-hmm. So in addition to funding and governance, in addition to independent groups that are taking place right now, there's also a review of the unit count system and of the opportunity funding as well, which could end up being a conversation about changing the entire unit system. But I do agree with you personally that I think we're not doing the best.
Yeah, thank you. And I am aware that the settlement calls for an independent review of the existing financing system for public education. We may indeed be we're a couple of years out from the actualization of that. Is that correct?
Based on the timeline of the settlement, we're just a short while away, but the legislature can move faster than that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions around this particular piece, Senate Bill 56?
I have a question. So I wanted to ask, it looked to me like this was written to focus on low income and English language learners. And I was wondering if this is sufficient to address also the history of systemic racism in education in Delaware, because my understanding was with the settlement that was a intention of the settlement. And do we feel it's sufficient the way that it's worded? And I don't know if that's specifically a focus of that bill, but I wanted to bring it up as far as the, underserved, under-resourced history of Black and Brown students, and just see if we feel that it adequately addresses that.
Yeah, I'd like to take a shot at answering this one
Go
a
for it.
little bit. I don't know that this bill necessarily does that. In our settlement work group, we have a lot of conversations and a lot of them are theoretical. We talk a lot about the icing and the cake, and the cake is the state funding that exists already, for the most part. Other than equalization, which is it's broken. The equalization Division III system is broken. It's been frozen for a while, and opportunity fund. There's really not a whole lot in there that really directly addresses equity, whether it's poverty or ELs or so forth. So we say that the cake is the 1.7, $1.8 billion that exists there already, except for that Division III and the Opportunity Fund. The icing, really, we say that this is icing. We're putting this on top of the cake that's there already. The cake needs to be, the cake has been wrong for a while. The cake hasn't been done right. And so we kind of look toward, that's why you hear us talk about the study that's coming up. We have to pin a lot of hope on this study, and we have to do it right in order for us to make the system do what it should have been doing all along. And that's the opinion of some of the members on the settlement work group. Those are the kind of things we talk about from time to time. So we have people come in and give presentations, and there are various viewpoints. There are people in there that are pro unit count. There are people in there anti-unit count, and there are some neutral people. But you make a great point there.
Yeah, I would agree. It's essentially, it's really a fairly straightforward codification of the existing opportunity funding program, which is a specific piece of the settlement to meet the requirements of it. But I think when we say, it's a floor, I think that's sort of part of what we're getting at. There's still systemic reforms to be done, as Ray indicated. And then I think as we see so thoroughly through our social determinants group, there's a lot of work to be done just on, repairing and making investments that are focused upon addressing those gross disparities that I think come from exactly that historical disadvantage that you're hitting on. So I think we're trying to get it on a few different fronts. This bill certainly is not the silver bullet, but it is a piece of the settlement that was agreed to in order to point us a little bit in the right direction.
See, Ms. Matos, Maria Matos.
Oh, thank you for catching our hand. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah. Well, I sit on many committees, and I take on a hat and put on another hat and a different hat and what have you. In my 70 years, I've done a lot of hats. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I sit on a steering committee of the Education Equity Delaware Coalition, and it's a coalition of 35 plus organizations. They have done extensive research on the underpinning of equitable education funding, and nope. I don't know if you've gotten this, but if you haven't gotten this information, let me know, and I'll get Neil to send it over to everyone on this list. But what we promote is equitable education to be flexible, transparent, and student-based funding. And this is 35 well-known, established organizations in the state of Delaware. So the work's been done. The grunt work has been done for many, maybe 2 years. And I think it's an opportunity for the Reading to join up with this Education Equity Delaware and work together to literally put something together that the legislators or anybody that wants to vote, yikes. If you vote, you count. So what I am offering is somehow if members of this committee can, maybe 1 or 2 members can join the Education Equity Delaware Coalition, it would be impactful. Have you heard of it?
I used to be a member, actually. Are you a member currently, Maria?
Yes, I am. And the work that has been done in this committee is incredible.
Well, so we've got you, and we'll have to take a look and see if we have any other overlap. I'm sure we do, probably at least in work group membership. But it sounds like something that we should be looking at for our funding work group specifically to make sure that there's, you know, some partnership going on there.
Can I send everyone or send it to you and you distribute it?
Yeah, if you send it to me or send it to Haley, we can make sure that everybody on our distribution list receives it.
Okay, done deal.
Great. Thank you, Maria.
And
All
we
right, anybody?
welcome, I was gonna say, we welcome lots of information to share. We plan on moving thoughtfully and quickly and making an impact. So anything that people want to share with us, we'd love to see that as well.
You should see the history that has been done, the historic perspective of how this funding or unit count, it's like a nail, that rusty nail that you can't take out with a hammer. So they've done so much research on the history. You guys are, I'm impressed. You guys are going to be impressed.
Look forward to it.
You're tough to, yes. I will take that.
If Maria was impressed.
And seriously, I mean it. So
Hey, at least I recognize my faults.
We appreciate you.
Faults. It's good to have a high standard. So, okay. Any other questions on Senate Bill 56?
Ray Jones Avery.
Oh, right. Make sure to.
I don't have a question. I just want to underscore Maria's urging for all of us to familiarize ourselves with different types of funding systems, the advantages and the disadvantages, and frankly, Delaware, and you all, most of you all know this, is only one of maybe 4 other places in the entire country that hasn't shifted with, you know, to a student needs-based system. But just in case, not just in case, I think that just as you had a public education financing 101 presentation for the entire consortium, I would suggest that in the future that we plan a briefing for the entire consortium on different types of funding systems that are more student needs driven.
Definitely. Suggestion well taken. I hope the chairs are listening, and I know that will become if it doesn't come up in subsequent slides here to talk about systemic reform options for funding tonight.
Senator,
yes.
The settlement group, we're going to have Dean Henry speak at one of our upcoming meetings, and he's going to do he's done a little bit of analysis for us to see, you know, what else is out there. So there might be a preview of what you're asking about at that meeting. I forget when it is. When is that next meeting? It's
March 1st.
March 1st.
At 5.
Yep. That's the one Dean Henry's speaking at, right?
Yep.
Yes.
And we're also going to have
Kristen
Dwyer from DSEA. She's going to talk for a little bit too. And we're just trying to get educated on, you know, all what's out there.
So can we schedule the coalition to come and do a speech too?
Sure, definitely reach out. We'll have Kelly can follow up.
Okay.
With you, and we'll definitely get you guys on the docket too.
Okay, let's keep.
So that's Senate Bill.
Pull us back. I did. That's all. It's all good. It's all obviously very, very important. But I want to make sure we stay on track in terms of the legislation we're reviewing. You would like us to, I think, ultimately endorse.
Thank
right?
you.
So let's.
Yes. The last one is HB 100. So it's mental health services. This is an important bill, one, not just because it provides funding for a counselor or social worker in the school above 250 students, and also a psychologist for 700 or more students. That's important, not just for the normal time. I think it's even more important considering we're getting back from a pandemic. And so you have children that have been out of school over the course of 2 years, coming back into school buildings, hopefully in the fall. And many have experienced so much loss and trauma on top of a pandemic. And so we need to make sure that as we're preparing children for the academic environment they're about to go into, the social and emotional environment is going to be weigh a lot on our families and on our teachers and on our students. So HB 100 is appropriate for that reason. This does not specifically speak to the settlement, although it is in line with the mental health portions of opportunity funding, which is also what we discussed in SB 56 and also a part of the opportunity funding. So we wanted to bring this to everyone's attention as well and ask for the Writing Consortium to endorse it. Before I jump to discussion, I want to just cue up a quick video so you can see more about it.
All right, give me a second. I think I'm going to stop sharing and I think Kelly is going to share the video. So bear
Make sure
with
to
us.
Click that little checkbox about sharing the sound. I've seen that
Ooh.
happen way
Okay.
too many times.
Good call. Probably would happen to us if you didn't say that.
I've been there.
And now I'd like to share testimony from a Delaware elementary school counselor.
Recently, 2 state reps came to visit my school. They walked the cheerful halls of my K-5 building.
And everything seemed to be as it should be.
While the representatives walked around,
They saw children sitting in classrooms who appeared to be learning.
what they couldn't see was that one of those students had just reported that their mother left drugs on the bathroom sink.
What they couldn't see was that one of those students had recently been sexually assaulted.
What they couldn't see was that one of the students was woken up by the police who were raiding their home.
What they couldn't see was that one student was terrified because a judge just let her mother have contact with her again.
What they couldn't see was that one child was thinking about hanging themselves with a jump rope when they got home.
What they couldn't see was that 2 students were thinking about the fire that had just destroyed everything they own.
What they couldn't see was that a student was worried about going to court because their father is being accused of bringing them to this country without their mother's permission.
What they couldn't see was that one student wasn't there because they were being assessed by a professional psychologist for being a potential risk to themselves.
What they couldn't see was that one student recently lost his mother.
What they couldn't see was that one student woke up and was told by their guardian that he was ruining their life.
What they couldn't see was that one student claims she feels empty inside.
What they couldn't see is that one student is worried because their parent just attempted suicide.
What they couldn't see was that one student wasn't at school yet because they had to meet with ICE.
What they couldn't see was that some students feel like they don't have a significant relationship with any staff member in the building.
What they couldn't see is that one student just got made fun of for having alcoholic parents.
What they couldn't see was that some students were worried about not having enough food for dinner.
What they couldn't see was that some students were scared their parents might get a divorce.
What they couldn't see was that one student was confused because her daddy hasn't been home in weeks.
What they couldn't see was that some students were confused all day because English is their second language.
They couldn't see that from looking at my students, but I see them.
But I could see them.
I see them.
I see all 501 of them.
These worries are real.
These events are all real.
I am in the building with my students for 7 hours or 420 minutes.
Takeaway time for breakfast, lunch, and dismissal duty.
And now I have 5.5 hours.
Which students should I pick to help?
Who will get pushed to the side because something is more significant?
I love being a school counselor.
I love being a school social worker.
This position is vital to students' well-being.
Our children are hurting. I love what I do, but I cannot meet the needs of all of my students.
Rather than just complaining after work,
I am reaching out to ask for a systemic change.
Our students are worth it.
Our students are worth it.
They need us.
Thank you.
The one thing that did come up was for this bill, HB 100, just for commentary, that the Division 1 unit should impact Division 2 and 3 units, so oversight for HB 100. since we are looking to increase the staffing of schools, then that should also impact some of the work. Again, this is just added conversation. This is not stopping the bill at all. And so those are some of the comments that members had. With that, I'm going to move to discussion.
I see Maria's hand.
Oh, no, I never took it down.
Oh, sorry. But I feel like you might have something to add. Anyone? I mean, that's my second time watching the video in a group setting, and it tends to leave people pretty speechless. So I'm sure folks are just, absorbing that. And this bill's been around for a while.
Senator, the only thing that worries me
Mhm.
is that it doesn't offer the districts the flexibility on how they can use their funds. When you say unit, usually the Department of Education gives them very, and correct me if I'm wrong, is my red clay person here, the boss? Yeah, Doral. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when they give you a unit, they tie your hands. They kind of tell you, this is what you can use it for, and only that. So, I would hope that it's more flexible than that.
I know that there have been some changes. Aaron, one of the members of your work group is Kristen Dwyer. And did you want to bring her in to add it?
Kristen Dwyer, come on down.
Yeah, before Kristen goes, I think that it does allow us to look at licensed clinical social workers, school counselors, school psychologists to really determine the need. I think the bigger thing is, from my perspective, where we're going to find the staffing to fulfill it. And not only that, to look at, again, in-service supports to those who are currently in the field and in the profession to continue to use and elevate their skill set to meet the ever increasing demand on our social workers, on our school psychs, and our school counselors. So the needed in-service professional development for those who are currently in them, because again, we're talking about culturally responsive supports to students who come from diverse backgrounds that don't necessarily often mirror the staff members who we're hiring for those particular positions. So just flagging that as well. But the bill in its current proposal does allow for it to be licensed clinical social workers, school psychologists, and/or school counselors.
But a unit indicates, Darrell, that you have to hire a staff. They will become a staff member. Is the bill allowing you to contract services if you can't find someone that is culturally appropriate?
Yeah, Maria, I think that's a really good point. They did that in one of them. I believe it's for school psychologists, but not in the other areas. But Kristen may have more information on that.
Sure. So I worked with Representative Longhurst to write the bill, and the concerns that have been brought up by you, Maria, as well as Darrell, were addressed over a year's worth of work on the committee. So the unit is established and districts have the flexibility. It's established via student to professional ratios. So for every 250 students, a school would earn either a school a school counselor, or a licensed clinical social worker, or a school social worker. And the 250 number is based on the best practice ratio of those national organizations of those professionals in order to provide the types of service in a faithful and dedicated manner. They need to be at that ratio. A district could then earn, for every 700 students, they would then earn a school psychologist or a licensed mental health therapist. And they have the flexibility amongst those 5 positions to determine what is needed in each school and what is needed in the district. And furthermore, they have the ability to cash in the unit to provide district-wide services that are supporting mental health, as well as the use of fractional units. To address Darrell's point regarding the pipeline, we, as the RAND report actually concluded in the first year of opportunity funding, when we wrote the bill, we were very well aware of the fact for critical need that the school psychologists are a critical needs certification area. And So we, in the bill, wrote out that districts can contract for these services until such time they are no longer identified as a critical need. We have a problem statewide of districts, and no offense to any of the superintendents that are on, and I think they're just addressing the need because of the pipeline, but they are contracting out these services in our schools. There's one district in particular that contracted out all of their elementary school counselors. And when you contract out services, there is turnover. You don't have the same type of school community. You don't have the relationship building that we're hoping to get from this bill. So for the other positions, we did not allow for contracting out, but we did allow the additional flexibility in the use of fractional units and everything else. We also know that school social workers from the RAND report are a shortage area. School social workers, yes, they are. And that's why because it's a niche certification for social work. So that's why we added the licensed clinical social workers who there isn't a critical need of them out there, and nor is there a critical need for school counselors. Do we think that these positions will be funded, or for licensed mental health therapists, I should also add. But do we think all these positions will be filled in the first year? No, not at all. We do feel that this is a ramping up over time. And so we are, we're excited about the bill. We think that it can bring about much needed change. For a lot of our students, this is not a bill that is solely for our low income schools. It's for every elementary school in Delaware, because what we found out during the process of this bill is that mental health knows no demographic. You could come from, privileged background, so to speak. You can come from a not so privileged background and still struggle with mental health, just in different degrees. And I think we all recognize the degrees that I am talking about. So we understand Ray's point regarding the unit system, but we wrote a bill that is reflective of what we live in currently. And this bill, the one thing I have to say about DSEA in my 8-9 years with them is that we rely on experts to move our legislative agenda forward. And those experts are our teachers and our other educators. And when they tell us there's a critical need for something and they tell us exactly why, we have to be responsive to that. That testimony was from an elementary school counselor from the Red Clay School District. That's one school. All of those incidences came from one school.
Wow.
I have Rick Geisenberger too.
Yes, Secretary Geisenberger.
Hi, just this question and a comment. I'm a member of the Delaware Healthcare Commission. We just created a new subcommittee of the commission focused on workforce development. And the very first presentation we heard was from what was deemed the most critical shortage of healthcare workers in the country. And guess what? It was child mental health.
Yes.
Where they were talking at great length about the lead time that would be necessary to actually begin to address this challenge, and how they're using telemedicine, how they're trying to find ways to leverage other healthcare providers to sort of be in the room while they do a telehealth consult with a child psychologist or a child psychiatrist, because there's just no physical way. This is a national problem.
Mm-hmm.
This is not unique to Delaware. It's probably worse in some corners of our state than others, but it is a problem, as I understand, throughout the entire state, throughout the entire region, and all over the country. So I guess the question I had for Kristen is, what is the math? How many actual positions, units does this create? I just think everybody needs to be realistic that, especially if you're talking about child psychologists and the amount of time it takes to get those degrees, you could be talking about lead times of just very long lead times. And that we may need to figure out creative ways to get those services through telehealth methods with maybe somebody who isn't certified, but is there connecting to the person who is certified through telehealth. I just share it.
If I can piggyback on the secretary's question before you answer, I was looking at the RAND study as well, and I think, not only were these mental health positions, I think, took up the largest share of Opportunity Fund application, but then I think there was something like 30% of what was hoped to, the positions that were hoped to be established were not able to be filled because of that shortage, just on the basis of opportunity fund asks. So I think in my mind, that sort of correlates with Secretary Geisenberger's question in terms of how do we solve for the shortage?
Sure. I mean, I can't speak for the districts in regards to the report, what they submitted for the RAND report for the analysis, or when they had decided to make the hire versus when COVID hit. But I would say to Secretary Geisenberg, and a lot of people make this mistake, in my opinion, often, is, they separate these positions from, they kind of categorize these positions, health and school. These positions are school-based positions. A school counselor, a school psychologist, a school social worker, those three in particular, those are school-based positions that do other things outside of supporting mental health. They do it in addition to supporting mental health. So a school counselor, while they can do the group PD, the group counseling sessions, the individual one-on-ones, school counselors typically are also in charge of 504s currently. But they also, it's not that they are a clinical mental health physician. Same thing with school psychologists. School psychologists do the developmental screenings. They work with IEPs. There's also a cost recovery for work that a school psychologist does on an IEP. They can bill back to Medicaid. I know districts still are struggling with being able to bill private insurance for that. And same thing with school social workers. School social workers actually hold a dual hat. They are typically your school truancy officers. So it's not necessarily, I think it's just, having to divide clinical versus non-clinical. The two positions that are more clinical are obviously the licensed clinical social workers and the mental health therapists. And mental health therapists, there are a variety of certifications that fall under that. So, I think what we are in is a crossroads of health services and school-based services. You actually have an endeavor underway for school-based wellness centers that want to leverage the telehealth that Secretary Geisenberg is actually referring to, but that's because they're providing a clinical service. These positions are school-based positions. We are under no false hope that these positions will, there's no denying that this bill will not be fully staffed in the first year. That's why the fiscal note is large, because you obviously have to make budget decisions around it. You have to appropriate accordingly, but there is absolutely no way these positions are going to be filled within the first year. The unfortunate thing is the University of Delaware is scaling back their school psychologist program. We're hoping that with this bill, they would see a need to expand it, because now school psychologists know that they can get a job in a school if they want to, that these positions are available. The big thing that this bill does is it eliminates opportunity cost. Rather than a district having to decide that they need a math teacher or a school psychologist, they can go with the school psychologist or with the school counselor because they have a direct line of funding. And I hope that's helpful. But we've made pleas for the last 3 years to have the administration work with us on how to scale this bill out so that, one, it is responsibly affordable, but we are also creating that pipeline. And we haven't gotten that.
You have Noel.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring up that in the Grow Our Own recommendation from the educator work group, we were really careful to write that so that it doesn't just refer to teachers, but also encompasses support staff like counselors and school-based mental health. And so when you're talking about the pipeline and the staff mirror the demographics and represent the student population, there may be some overlap where that recommendation might also be able to support this.
Thank you. Maria?
For a pathway. Sorry.
I was just going to Maria, but go ahead, Senator Lockman.
Oh, no. I was saying, I think we're definitely right for a pathway to begin developing more future mental health counselors and other types of workers for our schools as well. But sorry, go ahead, Maria.
Well, here I go again. You know, I appreciate Krista Dwyer's presentation, but it sounded to me like the same old, same old. Let's do the things the same old way. And you know, and we know, if we're going to be honest with each other, that the most affluent schools are the ones that are going to get the counselors and the social workers, because there's the largest shortage is among culturally appropriate services. So if we're not having that kind of flexibility, then a bilingual Spanish speaking person that has their own practice, because they don't have 250 kids per one. 250 kids. You just mentioned did a whole video on how kids are committing suicide, on how they're doing this, X, Y, Z. We saw the video, no? Yet one unit equals 250 kids for one person. Is that what I heard? Or am I hearing, am I Spanish?
You heard right, Maria, and I missed it next to you in our meetings too.
I did hear right. 250 kids with all those problems, and then you add in my community undocumented that have been put in cages, that the parents have been taken away from them, that they haven't seen their aunts and uncles, that they haven't hugged their grandmother for a whole year. And we don't want flexible. I don't know. I think I'm not listening right.
I think for this piece, one, we don't currently have this set up right now. And so I agree with you, Maria. We do not have all the supports in place. And I agree that the pipeline is not currently there. I also agree that mental health is now core to schools. I think when we've thought back about history and math and the courses we think of schools, if we're not putting the resources together for mental health in schools, then we're going to have a lot more chaos happen. And so I'm somebody that has worked with students who've been in cages. I'm somebody that has worked with students who have had a parent murdered and then came to school the next day because that was the only safe place for them. I think that we need to make sure that the funding is in place. And I know this is a huge request because now we're looking at what are the finances as well as what the pipeline is. At the same time, by not passing something that addresses mental health and the current needs we have, the regular pandemic we had of violence taking place in Delaware, the regular pandemic of food insecurity, the regular pandemic we've seen before has been there. Now we've added on an actual pandemic that we can see and that people are talking about. That's still going to be here in September. So the issue for us is, yeah, we got to build a pipeline. Got it. We got to make sure that students have access to the right people. And we also need to see people be consistent in the schools. Because I can say that somebody that has contracted out and somebody that's had people in person, having somebody there means a whole lot more. But I don't think this is something that is necessarily doing the same old. I think what we're looking at is the fact that we haven't even done this. Mm-hmm. And so part of it is how do we make sure that we can put something in place? Because if we're not addressing this right now, the dollars and cents we're talking about, the dimes and nickels will be hundreds and thousands of dollars as we are dealing with death and decay and despair and prison sentences later on in life. And so if we don't address this now, then we might as well forget education because we need to put our resources in what is the after effect of not educating a child properly.
All I'm saying is a little bit more flexibility.
Got that. And so we're adding again for HB 100 what our committee did, and I see you there, Gary. Our committee is looking at, so what is the baseline? So one of the recommendations was also that there be, can we lessen the numbers? Because I think to what you said, Maria, 250 is kind of high, and I agree with you. So if it were, if that could be lower, we'd love to see more support. Again, that deals with the fiscal note and the pipeline, which I think is still important. At the same time, is there other room for flexibility? I agree. And then the ramp up process, I think is what people are talking about as well right now. But I'd hate for us to then say, we don't agree to have mental health be core to our schools because we're trying to make something that's perfect and not looking at what is necessary by the way, our kids are coming back in person in September, in August, and we need to have the funding in place. I'm saying this as an educational leader.
Yeah, and I don't want to shut it down, although that's exactly what I'm going to try to do, because we do have to keep moving. We have another person with their hand raised.
Yeah, Dr.
There are
Henry.
4 conversations that we're going to continue to be having. So I'm just going to like put a pin in it for a second. And I see Dean Henry has his hand up, and then we're gonna transition to your proposal for a vote.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be as quick as possible. I just wanted to update some information that was incorrect about UD reducing the size of the school psychology program. Last year, I requested, and the Board of Trustees approved, a blanket reduction in tuition down to the rate for all students that Delaware students would pay for that graduate program. And we have enrollments in the double digits for the first time. Last year, our applications are up for this coming year. And so I think we're going to see an expansion of that program. And we're actively considering a school social worker program to accompany that because of the dramatic needs in the state. I do sit on this, the work group with Aaron and Chuck. And I would say that while I think this bill to me represents somewhat of a compromise. We've got a unit system, we're used to that, but a system that would allow more flexibility in the beginning would get more of these mental health professionals working with students more quickly. But the unit system is what we have built on, and for that reason, I felt it was worthwhile to support this. But to support the bill, but flexibility is the key, because not all of these professionals can handle the same kinds of issues that we heard about on that video, and they're specialty areas. And I think what the unit system does is encumber the ability of a principal in the school to find the right professional for the family and the students that they're trying to serve in the long run, and reduces flexibility. So I think in the long run, we need to consider ways to do this that are much more flexible.
Mm-hmm. And so Aaron, before you go into the proposal slide that we're going to vote on it, I just want to acknowledge that I'm hearing a pretty strong theme in response to the bills that we're looking at. And I think it's fabulous that the settlement work group is bringing us current legislation to be thinking about endorsing. But I'm hearing a very strong theme about the systemic reform and wanting us to get on that. And of course, all of these bills are working within the context that we now have and are going to continue to have, at least through this session. And, so have to work within that. But just wanted to kind of note that, and I hear that urgency, but also understand why the bills are working within that context. So, Aaron?
And our next presentations will not be this long, so we can move on to.
But bills get filed, maybe it will be.
So I'm hearing flexibility for HB 100. There was also the push for Division 2 and 3 units to be considered for HB 100 as well. So there's support in place. I think that also speaks to what Superintendent Green was talking about, which could lend to the fact of how do you provide more support for them. The other piece is just making sure that if we want to consider lowering numbers or what the ramp up could look like and the flexibility, that's also what I heard. Again, these are all recommendations shared tonight, as well as for some from our committee meeting on February 8th. With that, we'd love to create a motion to support recommendation that the consortium support HB 86, which is K3 basic special education unit funding. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Are we going to do all three together?
If I would love to. Okay, so I'll go back. So for HB 86, K-3 basic special education unit, as well as the worker recommends that the consortium support Senate Bill 56 for opportunity funding, And the work group recommends the consortium support HB 100 Mental Health Services Unit for elementary schools.
So move.
All right. So we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any?
Stephanie Ingram, second.
Oh, great. Double second. Do we have any discussion, concern around that before we go to the roll call?
Yeah, flexibility.
Noted. I think, Aaron, you've noted all of
Noted
the
that.
concerns,
Yep.
and they are going to be shared with the bill sponsors.
Some of who are here tonight.
Yes, I hope so. I'm sure they are. Great. Yeah. So yes. Any other concerns or questions? Does discussion on this motion to support all three bills? And what that means would be that we would issue a formal communication about our support as a consortium for these bills. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands or things. So I think, Jason, I think we're good to do a roll call on that.
Okay, sounds good. I am going to just run through this. Okay, so Aaron Bass.
Emphatically yes.
Emphatically yes. Okay, thank you. Alfreda Butcher, has she shown up? No. Okay. Dan Shelton.
As yes as Aaron.
Okay, thank you. Has Danielle Woods showed up?
Danielle?
No. Okay. Darrell Green.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Eugene Young.
Oh.
Did we lose Eugene?
Might have.
Okay, I don't see him. Okay. Henry Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. James DeSheen. Uh-oh.
Oh, I don't see him.
I think we lost him. Okay, Jeff Menzer.
Yes.
Joe Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. Has Catherine Bradley joined us? No. Okay. Lynn Kohler.
Yes.
Thank you. Senator Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. Margie Lopez Waite.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Matos.
Yes.
Thank you. Has Mayor Brzezicki joined us? No. Representative Smith.
Yes, my son Troy says yes too. Sorry.
Okay, excellent. So that counts too, right? Okay. Representative Chakwocha.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Danya Woods is here.
Oh, great. Danya, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yeah, Danye, sorry.
Yeah,
I had
sorry,
something
thank you.
going on at home. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Noel Picara.
Yes.
Thank you. Ray Jones Avery. Is Ray
I'm
still-
voting no. There are too many unanswered questions for me, and the bill needs amendment. Well, I'm specifically the HB 100 needs amendments for me. No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie Ingram.
Yes.
Thank you. Ted Blunt. Still not with us. Okay, Tika Hartsock.
Yes.
Thank you. Senator Lockman.
Yes.
Thank you. Matt Den.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a message. Eugene.
I think he's
Yes. Back.
on. There he is.
Okay, thank you, Eugene. Okay.
So I think we had a quorum there, and sounds like the yeses had it. Is that, can you confirm that, Jason?
Correct, yes. 19 votes in favor.
Okay. All right, so we will formally support this legislation and these investments in addition to our interim recommendations. Don't forget.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm as the representative for the Wilmington Center for Education Equity. I will put our dissent in writing so that it will not be misconstrued. Certainly, the bills are meritorious. The need is great, but we will put our dissent in writing. So in the suggested amendments.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, I think that's the bulk of our work complete. Aaron, Chuck, settlement work group, great job. Thank you for walking us through this. I think it was really helpful and very hopeful. So with that, if no other consortium members have anything they would like for us to consider, I'm not seeing any movement, we will move into public comment.
No, I have.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have something.
Yes, go.
I just wanted to make it public record in front of all these distinguished people around this Zoom that I think that districts, I think that the Department of Education needs to take their hands off the district decisions. It isn't until the districts are able to identify the needs of the kids and act accordingly without having the restraints on their ankles and on their hands by this unit count, that you can only use a unit count for a certain piece of thing, whether the child needs it or not. That's the system that needs to be changed. And until we do that, we're going to continue to do the same old, and the ones that are going to suffer the most, and we're going to continue with this damn pipeline to prison, and our kids are going to continue to get killed because we want to do the same thing because it hasn't worked for years. But guess who it hasn't worked for?
Brown.
Yeah.
Our Black and brown children.
That's right.
Correct.
I just wanted that as public record.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. And in particular, our governance work group efforts. So
I don't know, Senator, I respect you a lot, but we got to be stronger than that, because the Department of Education ties the district hands. And if these district members here on this floor don't agree with me, shame on you. Maybe you shouldn't be a superintendent.
Well,
you need to make decisions for your school, for your district. And then you as superintendents need to allow your principals to make decisions for their school based on the needs of those kids. Until we do that, we're not going to do anything else. And I'm not an educator.
Senator, may I make a quick point in support of Ms. Mato's statement there?
There you go.
Take a look at the funding. We take a look at the cake and the icing.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do with a Division I unit? We can do just about anything. We can hire a math teacher. We can hire a special ed teacher. We can hire a counselor, a librarian, art teacher. We can hire a social worker. We can split it into paraprofessionals. We can do all kinds of stuff. Yeah. We can even transfer it from one school to another. The icing, the opportunity fund, is incredibly prescriptive. So isn't that, that's a point that I made in an earlier meeting, I believe, is that, why is the icing so prescriptive, but the cake is so flexible?
Because I don't want to educate Black and brown kids, Mr. Longfellow. Don't you know that already? That's called institutional racism.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you all. I think that's important and it needs to be said. And I appreciate you all for saying it in the strongest terms. So anyone else want to add, or shall we move to public comment? Okay. Do we have any signups for public comment? We might just be doing our own public comment tonight. Okay. I don't see any hands. You can raise your hand. You can let us know in the chat that you would like to comment, or if neither of those works, you could just start talking. But it looks like I'm not seeing any. So if not, I'm going to thank all of you for your time in an ongoing way tonight and at every meeting that that you participate in. In terms of our next meeting, we do meet bi-monthly, so that would mean, what month is this? February, March, April. We'll be meeting in April. We date to be determined. So of course, all of you will be the first to know when that has been decided. And you're always free to join us on our Friday planning meetings when we hash out exactly those kinds of things. So thank you again, everybody. I look forward to seeing you at all the meetings and definitely in April. And keep doing the work. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to me.
Always.
Thank you, Maria.
Maria.